Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. They also make it harder for me to talk, so I have a kind of a sore throat right now from being fumed. So bear with me. I'm going to start off by reading Judges 2:3. And I've also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. So the other tribes, the other nations, right? They become traps for the Israelites and snares. Now, you have to understand that the story does not center around the Israelites no matter how you slice it, okay? Because Israelites are stoned to death for doing what's wrong. Servants are grafted in. Eventually the kingdom of heaven is taken from them in this story and is given to a people who will perform its works, meaning a collection of people, a grouping of people, a grouping of righteous people, according to the story, which is a story with a moral. So if you take it literally, you get that it doesn't center around them, right? They eventually drop the ball, just like Noah's 3 sons in the story, what have you. If you take it figuratively, same thing. If you do your due diligence, it leads to the divine order and not to the Jewish people. No offense to anybody. So again, in Judges 2, verse 3, and talking about the other nations, it says, and I've also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. Their gods will become snares. So what are the snares? Their gods. The worship of their gods, the way of it, their orders, right? They're not divine orders. I kind of slipped on my words. Their orders and their ways, their paths become snares, right? Righteousness, right, is the opposite of what they're doing. So you see in Proverbs 8, verse 20, it says that wisdom walks in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice. So instead of them being in the divine order, walking in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice and being wise, they're in the snares that are their deities. Now this is key here. I need to really emphasize this so you understand what I'm saying and you don't get confused when I read Isaiah 24. So again, Judges 2:3. And I've also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. So let's look at Isaiah 24, verse 16. From the ends of the earth we hear singing, glory to the righteous one. But I said, I waste away, woe to me, the treacherous betray, with treachery the treacherous betray. Terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Notice the word being used is snare. Terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Whoever flees at the sound of terror will fall into a pit. Whoever climbs out of the, I guess the word is pit, I forgot to write in my notes. Whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. The floodgates of the heavens are opened, the foundations of the earth shake. The earth is broken up, the earth is split asunder, the earth is violently shaken. The earth reels like a drunkard, right? They're drunk on the blood of the saints, the wine of the wrath of God, right? The earth reels like a drunkard, it sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls never to rise again. Okay, so how do we know that the earth falls never to rise again and that it's not just another period of time? Well, one, when the prophets of the Old Testament were warning the Jews, there was a lot of things that took place, right? There was, the captivity in Egypt, right? There was the captivity with the Assyrians, with the Babylonians, the Persians, eventually the Romans. A lot of these things took place, okay? But they were all consistently warning of a final event. And so we know it's not just a phase. Because if people are just going to be punished for a time by captivity, that's happened. That happened in Egypt, happened in Babylon, happened in Rome. So it has to be some kind of final event that separates the righteous from the wicked once and for all. Okay. So now let's look at the last verses here. I don't have it written down, so I'm going to go off the top of my head. It says something to the effect of, they will be punished after many days, and in the notes it says they will be released after many days. Now, the reason why they don't understand what the Hebrew is saying is because they're refusing to admit what it's saying, is what it appears to be at least. Okay, we can look at the context of it and see that what it's saying is they'll be punished for many days leading up to the event, and then they'll be released into hell Okay, they'll be punished for many days leading up to the event on the top layer of hell, which is the earth, right? Satan is said to be the ruler of this world in a sense. The top layer of hell, right? And then they'll be released into hell when their flesh dies. So it's not saying that they'll be punished for a time and then there'll be this magical transformation when with no Messiah they'll magically be saved. It's not saying that. Okay, the Messiah comes and goes at the end, right? He punishes the enemies of God. He throws them into the lake of fire, Revelation 19, Revelation 20. Okay, and the Bible ends at Revelation 22. And if you look at it with a holistic approach and you think about what it's saying and you really analyze your heart and soul and you look at it in terms of interpreting within the boundaries of righteousness and justice, because the Bible's vague, so you have to know how to interpret it. You have to know what it must be getting at. The ending must be righteous and just. The ending is known by righteousness and justice. God is known by his acts of justice, and the ending of the Bible is known by interpreting it within the boundaries of righteousness and justice. And Proverbs helps us do that when it says, acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both. It says the offspring of the wicked will perish in Psalms, and in Isaiah 57 it says the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. They're taken away kind of like Elijah, right? They're taken in spirit into the spiritual realm. So let's go back to verse 17. All right, Isaiah 24 verse 17. Terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Now why? Well, let's go to verse 20. The earth reels like a drunkard, it sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls never to rise again. Because of its rebellion, that it falls never to rise again. Does it have to do with the divine order? Yes. Let's go back to verse 16. From the ends of the earth we hear singing, glory to the righteous one, right? God and his son. But I said, I waste away, woe to me. Now what is happening? What is happening is the Spirit of God and I in the world, or what's left of it, or the potential for them to connect to it is dimming, right? Is closing. Right, the seven seals, they're being sealed out of heaven for their seven sins, right? The seven abominations that fill their heart. And we see that in Judges with the 70 kings and the different sevens. When we put them together, we see that it's referring to people being cut off from the righteous because they're unclean and they refuse to repent and they refuse to glorify God. So it says, the treacherous betray, with treachery the treacherous betray. So the righteous one, the Son of God and God are saying they're being betrayed. And in verse 20 it says that it's the rebellion that causes the earth to sink, never to rise again, to fall, never to rise again. So this is like, it's sinking and then there's this fast falling because the end comes, right? After my flesh dies, that's it, and it falls in like free fall speed in a sense, and they're cut off. So now let's wrap this up here because it's going to take a while for me to upload this. They're giving me a hard time about uploading the videos. So Judges 2:3. And I've also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. Going back to Isaiah 24, verse 17, terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Terror and pit, right? The atmosphere of hell, you know, the spiritual state of hell, and snare, right? Their gods become a snare. Thus, Baal and Zeus, okay, and Hera and Mars and Aphrodite and Pan and Hecate and Hebe and Liber, you know, Dionysus, these Greek deities, these Roman deities, these Middle Eastern deities, these pagan deities from Africa, the deities that they're aware of, okay, and in all their forms become a snare to them because they're tempting them to join their paths, to rely on science, to rely on the churches, mosques, and synagogues, to rely on the crafts, right? They're called crafts, and the snake is said to be crafty in the garden, to rely on their ways and paths. So those ways and paths become a snare as they try to coerce them. It's like the state trying to get people to conform. And they don't just try to get you to conform and say, hey, I guess if you go to a church, you're magically safe. No. And the churches aren't like, well, you know, there's some churches that are obviously satanic, and, you know, their spirit isn't saying that if you go to those churches, that if you don't go to the churches that are obviously satanic, but instead go to the churches that are subtly satanic, that you're magically safe. It's not saying that. Their spirit is saying that they're a snare because it is the spirit of following these deities. For example, most churches are either clearly white or whitewashed, and so they put that before God, right? They put conforming to the state and their communities and reinforcing their social orders before God. So they worship a sort of pagan deity of white culture. And white culture is derived from Zeus, right? The Romans had a Senate, the Roman Senate, right? The Roman Colosseum. In a sense, the whole world is the Roman Colosseum, as Western culture is causing people to fight against each other and throwing them to the lions, so to speak. The Romans ended up taking control of the church to the point where it was called the Roman Catholic Church. Then Martin Luther and other white supremacists broke away and made the Protestant movement. Then you had the age of, you had the confessionalism age, where people were forced to do things a certain way based on the region. Instead of serving God, they served the white orders of the region. And then you had the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation. Then you had the Age of Enlightenment. Okay, all this stuff was based on white social orders, and people who are whitewashed helped them, and so on and so forth. And Freemasons were heavily involved, and other groups and social clubs and corporations and political movements. So through every other path, the ideas that the gods refer to in the story, little g, the demons refer to, really they're demons. Okay, through these other paths, atheism, the churches, mosques, synagogues, okay, so-called, New Age movements, well, they're really New Age movements, so-called spiritual movements, like every other path is really a demon that's a snare to them. And I went way over time here, so let me end with Judges 2:3. And I've also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. So it's saying that the other nations' deities, which includes Rome, right? Rome was foreign to the Israelites in the story. That their ways, their gods, like Zeus is said to be the god of so-called justice. It's fake justice, like the criminal justice system, but it's more than that. It's all Western conceptions of justice, okay, is what Zeus rules over. And Liber, where you get the word liberty, right? They say liberty and justice for all. Liber is a young Zeus, Dionysus. He's a deity of ritual madness, rape by deception, abuse, wine, ecstasy, religious ecstasy, a chthonic deity from the dark underworld, what have you. Okay, Mars, their conceptions of this pagan warfare. Eros, their false conceptions of love, erotic desire. Hermaphroditus, right? We get the word hermaphrodite. Okay, Hermes, a deity of leading souls to the underworld. So as we look at the different paths of the Roman elite and their cults, we see that they worship the devil. Okay, what they had in common was several things. Pan, whose name means all for all the Greco-Roman deities, but it's also the so-called quote-unquote genius, which was the serpent deity of the essence of the statue. And the essence of all the Greco-Roman deities is wickedness, injustice, rebellion, greed, pettiness, right? In the Hercules series, they describe the Greek gods as petty and cruel, and the Greek gods and Roman gods are like identical, and they're nearly identical to the Middle Eastern gods and the Egyptian gods, what have you.